Hello, and welcome to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. So my guest today is no stranger to big talk. She's had some of the biggest talk, and I can't wait to get into her story. Sallie Krawcheck is the co-founder and CEO of Ellevest, an innovative digital investment platform designed to help women reach their financial goals. She's also the chair of Elevate Network, a professional networking community whose mission is to advance women in businesses. She is one of the highest ranked women ever to have worked on Wall Street, having held posts such as CEO of Smith Barney, CEO of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, and CFO of Citigroup. She is one of the most read influencers on LinkedIn and has been profiled as one of Fast Company's most creative people in business, as well as in the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, Forbes, and more. She ranks uniquely among some of my guests. I've had guests on the show who have literally died and been brought back to life. I've had guests who have lost their limbs. I have guests who have broken records and won medals. But I've never had a guest who's been fired on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So welcome, Sallie Krawcheck. Let's have some big talk.
Not once, twice. Come on. Twice.
Okay, that's going to be hard to beat. So
I know.
And any of my other guests.
I'm sure there's a man or two who has, but I'm absolutely certain I'm the only woman who's been fired on the front page of the Wall Street Journal twice.
So what does that feel like, that moment? You pick up the
newspaper.
newspaper.
Amazing.
Like, you knew it was coming.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It is so much fun. It's humiliating and it's demoralizing and it's embarrassing. It's all the things that you just want to do this. But the truth is, you can have one of two attitudes. You of course go through that for some amount of time. I tried to keep it to about 3 minutes. But so you can go with that. This is embarrassing. I can't, I need to hide my head. But there's another approach to it, which is I did my best. I took a bunch of risks. There were risks that didn't work. I'm leaving here in the case of when I left both of those jobs with my head held high, feeling like I was making the ethical, correct decision. And hot damn, I'm on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I mean, who would have ever thought when I was growing up as a little girl in 70s Charleston, South Carolina, where honest to goodness, it was all about dating the football player, that I would do anything that would put me in the Journal, much less on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
I just love that you had a bell somewhere in your home that ding, ding. As soon as you said, there I was on the front of the Wall Street Journal. Ding, ding. It was like, that was perfect. I swear there's
no grandfather's clock, which you get used to, but it takes a while.
I was like, I swear that was not intentional, but had I known, we could have timed the start of this interview perfectly. So, right. So you were growing up, little girl, dreaming of a football player, not dreaming of Wall Street. When did you start thinking about business? When did you start thinking about money? When did you start thinking about Wall Street as a place you wanted to be?
Yeah. You have these moments, these life-changing moments that you just come out of the blue. I remember I was taking typing classes after school in order to prepare for my eventual job as a typist.
Yes. I remember those classes.
Yep. And, and thank goodness I did, because I got to tell you, Laura, I'm the fastest typist you have ever met in your life. And I'm walking down the hall at school with my boyfriend, who was cute as a button, but, probably not going a ton of places. And the guidance counselor, who was sort of a jerk, said, Sallie, come here, pulled me aside and said, look at your SATs, look at your, I guess they did IQ scores in the day. Yes. Look at these scores. You can write, your own future. You are the highest in the class. You can really go places. And do you want to be, hanging on the maybe smile of a football player? Or do you want to see what you can do? And I'm like, well, I want to see what I can do.
Yeah.
And it was that moment where someone gave me permission to be ambitious and to go and to say it's okay. Because if she hadn't, I don't think I wouldn't have ever thought to do it, just because I didn't know anybody who'd ever done it, a woman who'd ever done it.
Isn't it amazing how it's always those moments, right? Like I think we as women are told so many times, go find a mentor. capital M mentor. And that's hard. First of all, like you've got one woman in the C-suite and every woman in the company wants a piece of her. So that's difficult. And not all women want to keep the door open behind them also, by the way. But I always tell young people to search for mentoring moments as opposed to mentors. And you had this moment which changed the trajectory of your life. I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good fortune. And I realize as I look at my career, I was an analyst at Bernstein, then I was the director of research, then I was running Smith Barney, so I went from running 286 people on a Wednesday, like 40,000 on a Thursday. Yeah, people, did you plan your career? Of course I didn't plan my career. Who could have planned that? That's crazy stuff. That's just, that's zany. But it does make you recognize that there's preparation, there's openness, there's hard work, and then there's luck. And there's privilege. There's absolutely privilege. And then there are these moments of luck where, they could just float on by you unless you're prepared for them.
So I've been recently doing this deep dive into this idea of luck. I'm fascinated by luck because there are people who seem lucky and there are people who seem unlucky. And what I've been recently learning is that luck, you can actually make your own luck. There's actual science behind how you can make your own luck. If you're somebody who's optimistic, if you're somebody who is extroverted, if you're somebody who tries new things, you're open-minded. But what I thought was super interesting, I mean, that's obvious, right? You put yourself in the deal flow if you were. But what was super interesting to me is that you can fake it. You can fake being all these things in order to get yourself in that place where you're lucky. So I want to talk about this notion. You write a lot about it in your book. It's, by the way, Own It, incredible book. People should check it out. You'll be happy to know that my bookmark is a little zebra print nail file. So, there's nothing more like, feminine power than that. There it is. You were known as the most honest analyst on Wall Street. And now you're calling yourself a rule breaker, which I think is really interesting. You're like, these rules exist. They don't make any sense. There was a moment where being honest got you in trouble.
Oh, sure. Many moments where actually being honest was breaking the rules. That when I started on Wall Street, so there was the 80s, I was late 80s, I was an investment banker. I had no idea what I was doing. And then in the 90s, the sort of, 94 to 2000, research analysts, believe it or not, individuals who made calls on buy this stock, sell this stock to investors, individual investors and institutional investors, sort of became rock stars. What a weird, I mean, now you think like, what? A research analyst was a rock star? What are they, yeah, look at my pocket protector. But they sort of were rock stars because it was a bull market, the stocks were going up, and there was a lot of investment banking at the time where corporations were issuing equity. And so there's a lot of money to be made. And most businesses, most Wall Street businesses had, would advise the individual investor buy low, but would also advise the company sell high. And I looked at this and said, wait a second, that's a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Well, we mitigate the conflict of interest and I'm like, you're probably better at separating your brain in two than I am, but this is a conflict. Let's get out of the investment banking business at Sanford Bernstein. We gave up millions and millions of dollars of revenue, which is a lot of money, even for Wall Street at the time. And we were in the one business. And it later turned out when the internet bubble burst, that everybody had these conflicts. They knew about them. They were joking about them. They were laughing at the individual investors. Like, oh, I'll go out and talk about this POS, but we'll get a lot of investment banking business. Elliot Spitzer came in, big fines, and Fortune put me on the cover as the last honest analyst. And Sandy Weil then brought me over to run a big part of Citigroup, what at the time was Smith Barney, because of the scandal. So, just by being honest. And by the way, I think there was also a moment of luck here, Laura, because nobody ever told me not to be. Nobody ever said, in a senior level, this is how the game is played. And I happened to work at a company that just had strong ethics. And so when I said this is unethical, the CEO was like, yeah, well, we'll give up some money and let's be ethical. So I was fortunate in that way.
So did you know that other people were not being honest all along and you were being the honest broker, literally? Or did you I always think there's people who know that the game's being played and they understand the rules and they work within it. There are people who don't even realize the game's being played. There's some people who think the game's being played, but they're above it. So was there a moment where you understood? Because I related to this part of your story. I worked at a big search firm, a marquee firm that did specifically work in the nonprofit sector. And there was a day where I woke up and I was like, wait a minute, we charge 1/3 of the first year's cash compensation, which means two things. The biggest searches we do, which by the way, tend to be some of the easiest to find candidates for, right? It's a lot easier to find the chief strategy officer for a huge international foundation than a fundraiser for a local domestic violence shelter. Bigger searches, bigger search committees, more work in some ways, but less difficult, complex, but less difficult. I was incentivized to spend my time on those searches and, by the way, finish them as fast as possible because more profit, less time on the ones who really needed us, and their money was so important to them. They needed every dollar. And also then I had to negotiate the salary for the candidate we were placing. And I was like, wait a minute, the bigger the salary, the bigger my payoff.
Right.
And I was like, this doesn't feel okay. But it took me a while to understand the rules. And once I realized that I wasn't necessarily incentivized to be an honest broker, that I was part of the, I wasn't part of the solution. I was like, well, maybe that means I'm part of the problem.
Right. Well, but take it even a step further, because at least there you were dealing with big boys and girls.
Yes.
Right. So these are professionals, right? The companies know what they're paying for.
Right.
The individual is getting the job. If you negotiate a bigger salary for them, good for them. The company can probably afford it. This involved individual investors.
Right.
Your mom and dad, who are, gosh,
sophisticated.
Really sounds like that, that stock what was it? PetSmart, pets, blah. Remember pets.com. That stock sounds great. They got a sock puppet, go. And so what I knew, I didn't know, everybody's being evil. What I knew is everybody was being optimistic. And I happen, it's funny because deep down I'm optimistic, but when I approached my research, I was a skeptic. In fact, there was a famous quote, which I regretted for years after I made it, when I was in Fortune, that said, how do you know if a management team is lying to you? Their lips are moving. Which you can imagine when I then became CFO of Citi, came right back to me.
Oh, yeah.
I approached it with skepticism and said, I'm going to assume the worst and go from that place of research because, I don't want my clients to lose money. I'd rather be a little too negative and have them miss some upside than be too positive and have them get downside. So what I definitely thought is everybody else is optimistic and I'm, skeptic. And then the other thing is Bernstein was in those two conflicted businesses when I was a research analyst. So I worked on the Goldman Sachs IPO. And what I found, Laura, is that, and it was a hot deal, so the price kept going up. Well, in theory, if the price keeps going up, then I should like it less, right? Right? You want to buy it cheap. But as the price kept going up, and to your point, we were going to make more money from it, I somehow found, even though I sort of knew, I'm like, I love this deal. That's when I got us out of it because I couldn't tell what other people were doing, but for me, I could feel the conflict. And I said, it's out there everywhere. But we almost went out of business because we were in this one silo of business. Everybody else had two revenue streams. And so they would just come and hire our people for more money because they had more money. And it's not hard to blame people. They wanted more money.
Sure. I mean, nobody gets into that work for.
Right. Nobody's like, I want to go do nonprofit work all the time. And so I'll go to Wall Street. Right. No, that's not how it works.
There's a clear incentive. Yeah.
And so I was hiring as fast as we could, because the bucket was leaking. And we would have gone out of business if the internet bubble hadn't burst and, the extent of this conflict of interest had not been revealed. So it was a hire wire act. And that's not even the time I got fired.
But I love this. I love the thinking around this because I used to always say all the time that I'm a misanthrope. I'm a misanthrope. I go into the interview with a potential candidate thinking that I don't like them so that I can be pleasantly surprised. And I once had a woman who worked for me who said that she's like, I think my problem is that I was a Catholic schoolgirl and I was just raised to like everybody. And so I go and looking for all the reasons I should like them. And I'm like, you can't do that. You have to look like our clients are idealists, they're optimists, they're hiring us to make sure that they don't get into trouble. We have to go and looking for everything that's wrong with these candidates. They're coming to us recommended. We have to find, like, we have to be thinking about risk. And so when you talked in your book about how you got fired for being a woman, you expect the next sentence to be because I wasn't like the guys, because, I had different body parts and I didn't go play, poker with them in golf. But you talk about how you got fired for being a woman because of the way that you think as a woman, that you were prioritizing risk, that you were thinking long-term, that you were putting the client relationship above the short-term and the bottom line. And I hadn't heard the gender disparity described in that way.
Yeah. And it's subtle. It's subtle because, so we're now fast forward, I'm at Citigroup. I am running the Citi Private Bank and running Smith Barney. And it's 2008, which you may recall is a subprime crisis. So I had big career moves during crises. And, I have a brand new boss. The people I've been working with had all been fired or quit or gone, but I've got a brand new boss. And I'm sitting in my office one day and someone walks in with Houston, we've got a problem. And it's Sallie. We sold a couple of $1 billion of a type of security to our top clients. And we thought there was going to be low risk. We thought they were going to lose 8 cents on the dollar. We were wrong. It's 100 cents on the dollar.
Oops.
Best clients, right? And best financial advisors. And the big print said, to be fair, the big print said, low risk. And the little print said you could lose everything. I said, well, I'm going to my new boss and we are going to partially reimburse these clients. It is the ethical thing to do. It is the right thing to do. It's the business savvy thing to do. If we don't, they're going to hate us. They're going to leave, and he was in complete disagreement. These people knew the risk they were taking. You see the legalese and the fine print. We are, and we went back and forth and eventually went to the board where the board heard us out. I won. We reimbursed clients. And up until a few years ago, Laura, I'd actually walk down the street and people would thank me for it. I mean, not all the time, not a lot, but every once in a while, someone will like, hey, you're Sallie, thank you. And I'm like, you're welcome. I got fired for it. What was the question?
The question was about how you got fired for being a woman, right? Yes.
Fired because I'm a woman. Okay, so fired because I'm a woman. Well, here's what I can tell you. What I can tell you is I was fired because I was different. And the differences were, to your point, we can't be looking at the short term, this quarter. We need to be looking at this long term over the life of these potential relationships. These will be long memories. We need to be looking at the risk of not doing it. There's the downside we know of doing it. It'll cost us money, but what about the risk? And we need to really focus on these relationships. These aren't, these are individuals. These aren't trading firms where you sort of smack them and then they come back the next day. These are people. But some of them, they're wealthy, but some of them aren't wealthy. I remember having a client call me crying because of this loss. Again, it was supposed to be low risk. He couldn't afford his daughter's wedding. So these are real people, real issues. And so that's what I was focused on. And so those are feminine, tend to be, obviously, everybody is an individual, everybody's different, but there are some commonalities across within the genders. And, as I began doing research on the characteristics that women tend to bring, those were the ones. So I wasn't fired, hey, you're a woman, get out. Though I will tell you, my boss had trouble looking me in the eye. I will tell you that there was sort of an undercurrent, the time of much more comfortable with the guys, much more, awkward, and would, certainly didn't like me when he would go around the leadership table of 10. I remember one day, Laura, sitting there, he asked everybody their opinion except for me. And I remember like, I have an opinion, I have an opinion, I have an opinion, I have an opinion. I'd like to give my opinion. But I can't hear you.
Sorry. When he was having trouble making eye contact with you, were you trying to be like extra awkward and like get like really in there and like try to make him do it? Or do you just let him kind of be his awkward self? Or like, if you're in that position and you can tell that your boss is uncomfortable just because you represent something different than he's used to, what do you do?
end up leaving or getting fired. You know, I really do think this culture we have, this message we have to women of self-help, the 10-step book, get the boss who won't look at you, you know, to give you the raise.
Yeah.
Forget it. That, you know, that is deep-seated gender bias, you know, socialized. I don't want to say all kinds of stuff, but this guy was uncomfortable and was known for being uncomfortable with women.
Yeah.
It's never going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, I can try all the 10-step stuff I want. It's never going to work. But
he's not yours to fix.
No. But I do remember, Laura, though I knew it was going to be trouble when he showed up at the company before he was CEO. And I'm like, welcome, you know, looking forward to working with you. You're running a business next to my business. I have a lot of ideas for us, how we can make it better and what about it. And so, well, he said, come see me. He was in a different office than me. So he invited me to come to his office. I get it. It's a power play. I got it. So I go to his office. I bring, of course, this is pre-iPad. So I bring my notebook and I bring 2 pieces of paper and I hand him one. And I said, I have a list of 10 things for us to work on together. Number 1, you know, and I go through, he has no pen and paper. He doesn't take a single note. He listens to me the whole time. And when I finish, he's like, okay, lots to think about. Thank you. And I'm like, I don't know. So either he doesn't like women, or he doesn't like Southerners, or he doesn't like bottle blondies. Not that I'm so bottle blondie anymore. You know, like the sound of my voice. You know, like the look at my face.
Or you're like, or does he not like my ideas?
Yeah, but at that, you're like, it's never going to work.
Yeah. And at that point, you know your ideas are good ideas. You know they're good.
Oh, I don't have the whole imposter syndrome, Laura. No. I was at the top of my industry. I'm the top woman at the top of the industry. At what was the time, the top. I mean, like I didn't have any imposter syndrome. Like, oh, gosh, my ideas aren't good. I don't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
Right. That was just bias.
Yes. Yes. It's so interesting because I thought when I wrote Limitless that it was a business book, and I was so completely convinced it was a business book. And then I got booked on the Today Show in the 9 o'clock hour, and the producer was like, so our audience is mostly stay-at-home moms. And I was like, what are you talking about? I wrote a business book. Why are you booking me here? And then I slowly began to realize that it was self-help and personal development. And my reaction was like, oh my God, I wrote a self-help book. Jesus Christ. And then I realized that there's actually some good self-help because you bring the help, but people have to bring the self, but most of it is crap. And actually Jordan Harbinger, the podcaster Jordan Harbinger gave me a blurb for the book that says something like, in a sea of self-sucking self-help garbage or soul-sucking self-help garbage, this book is one that actually doesn't make you feel worse about yourself than before you started, because it's true, right? The like, here's the 10-step program to get somebody to pay attention to, when really what you need is to like, get the fuck out and do something else, go somewhere.
Right? We never say that, right? We never like, it's not you, it's him or her. Yeah. It's not you, it's him. But, and then it's even worse than that, because, you know, you then make it to the top or the middle or whatever, and you're moving along and your career's going well. And then, you know, how's your work-life balance? Oh my God. I'm all for whatever balance you want. I don't care, right? Balance this way. My balance was, there was a period of my time when it was all about, so much about excellence at work. Let me see how far I can go. And I have 2 kids and 2 stepkids and 2 cats and a husband. And for them, I wanted to be average. Yes. I used to say mediocre, but people got upset with me when I said mediocre. I'm like, I'm going to be average. I'm not going to beat you. I'm not even going to yell at you. Right? But I'm not going to be like, make up your room and go to violin lessons. We're going to be average. You know, and I don't have work-life balance, essentially. And that's okay. And then, by the way, later I was totally balanced. I was totally over to the family. My kids both had health issues at one point in time. I was 100% with them, but there was a period of time. But I remember, Laura, being on, when I was CFO of Citi, being on a panel with, it was like the CFO of IBM and the CFO of GE and the CFO of, you know, whatever. So I'm sitting, the sole woman, and we talking capital allocation and, you know, how to manage the street and all that stuff.
And then you get the question.
Work-life balance.
Yep.
I'm like, awesome. So my being good at my craft at the top of my field is not good enough. I now need an additional hurdle. And I'm really very, you also have to recognize what a privilege it is to be able to even think about work-life balance.
Yes.
Our sisters of color, so many of them don't have that privilege, but it just drives me over the edge.
I have so many tangents that I want to go on this, but before we get to those, I want you to talk about the word empowerment, because we're right here in this area. And then I do want to talk about work-life balance. And I do want to talk about how you always took the phone calls about the pink nail polish and things like that, because I do think it's important. I do a lot of political fundraising in my sort of, hobby time. And it used to be that I would go to these events and it'd be like, stale crackers and old cheese. And it would be at a law firm downtown, and you'd be you and a bunch of guys, and you'd be standing around a conference room, and the men would raise their hand, and they'd raise their hand and they'd push in for questions. And then the host would be like, does anyone else have any questions? And they'd notice that I was there. And I, usually go to events when I give enough money that I'm going to get some attention, because I want to actually influence policy, right? Like I'm not going to go with like a $3 donation and just stand in the back, and that's not worth my time. And the host would always turn to me and say, Laura, do you have any questions? Maybe something about reproductive rights? And I'm like, no, I would like to talk about the private sector prison industrial complex.
Right.
I was like, let me talk about an issue that's like, it's just because I have a uterus does not mean that it is an important issue to me. It is not the only issue for me. And I was like,
we're comfortable with women on women's topics. So, I'm now an entrepreneur. I founded Ellevest, as I love to say, from dirt. Okay. So we're, as you mentioned, a digital investing platform. We're also a private wealth platform as well. And we're expanding out into other areas. You may have read that women, despite the fact that women-run businesses have as much as 60% higher returns than men-run businesses, women raise just 3 to 5% of venture capital dollars. Of those, when you look in contrast, fintech, which is what Ellevest is, women have raised over the past 10 years 1% of venture capital dollars. Now, this is bad and this is terrible. But what you see when you peel up across the numbers is that we tend to be more comfortable, funding women in categories that are very female, whether it's makeup, right, fashion, et cetera, which are amazing. But it is interesting. There's an analogy between, would you like to talk about reproductive rights, because that's a woman's issue, with, we're going to fund this business that is, sort of the woman business,
right? Fashion, beauty, right?
Yeah, well, all which is great. But boy, you turn up for a VC with something that isn't, squarely in that, and apparently you get dinged. The research tells you get dinged immediately.
Yes.
Yay.
So that's why we need the men to empower us, right?
Yeah, we definitely do. That's exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is exactly the answer. We just need more research, Laura, about how diversity drives better returns. And despite the fact that I feel like there are thousands, but maybe hundreds of pieces of research that shows that diversity leads to higher returns and lower risk and greater innovation and greater client engagement, greater employee engagement, but maybe it'll be the next one. And the men will then see it and they will say, please enter the boardroom. Or as Gloria Steinem said, no group has ever given up power willingly. A little bit, but not the whole bunch. And so, when we're talking about this sort of self-helpization of structural issues, right? The United States of America, does not have a mandated paid maternity leave or affordable childcare or, mandated sick leave. And we've seen from the pandemic, when things fall down, it falls on women. Laura Gassner, this great sociologist, has said other countries have social safety nets. The U.S. has women, right? But yet, with all that, we've convinced.
That is a truth bomb.
Unbelievable,
there.
Right?
Yes. I mean, women, we lost all of the losses have been women.
Unbelievable. And so, we've convinced women that, you can do this yourself. It is your fault if you are not a great mother and a great professional and look amazing and Zoom ready all the time.
Right. Because if you're not, just maybe just another bubble bath.
Yeah. And
maybe just a little milk package of goodies.
Self-care, just a little self-care. And you're going to be doing, then you just need to ask for the raise this way. Yeah. Well, here's where the empowerment of women, the other big lie comes in, that we need to be empowered, right? We are 51% of the workforce. We're probably a little lower now because we've disproportionately lost jobs in the pandemic. We direct 80 to 85% of consumer spending, and we control $7 to $8 trillion of investable assets. I mean, we are a massive economic force. But again, while we're being convinced that it's a self-help thing, part and parcel of that is each of you go on your own. Each of you go on your own. You follow the self-help. When you get into the companies, you already mentioned it, Laura, you get, you sort of drink the Kool-Aid of I'm following these rules. There's one seat at the table for a woman. I want that to be me. So I know who I'm competing with. I'm not competing with him or him or him. I'm competing with you.
Yep.
That's who I'm competing with. And that is so ingrained, and I, before all this, I used to do some salon dinners at my home. I'd have really wonderful, accomplished senior women. And, a few glasses of wine in, people would just start to say like, yeah, I didn't help. I kicked the ladder out from under me. I still wanted the job. She was younger, she was better, but I wanted my job. And since there's the only one space for a woman, right? And so we got convinced that we were competing when in fact, what the men have been doing the whole time is collaborating.
Yes.
And so they promote each other and talk each other up. And for them, business is a team sport. And for us, it's been an individual sport.
Yes, that is so. I've seen that. I have started things in the business sector, in the nonprofit sector, in the political world, and government, and I've seen it in every single sector. It is. We have been taught that success is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
With women.
But what's interesting, before the glasses of wine, I was at an event with a woman who said, there was probably 30 women in the room, and said, raise your hand if you've ever been queen beed. If you've had another woman kick the chair out from under you, talk behind your back, sabotage you, every hand goes up. Then she says, raise your hand if you've ever been a queen bee. And nobody raises their hands.
Yes.
And
it doesn't happen alone.
Ladies, you're lying to yourself.
Yes.
You're lying to yourself. Because somebody's doing it. And, and it's like, it's one of these moments where you're just like, oh my gosh, you're right. I did. I could have. Maybe I saw it this way. I saw it as helpful. But, like a woman who, I remember when I was at Bank of America, very senior woman there. We were talking about a big project that, this is going to be, we want people on this project that are going to be part of the next group of C-suite execs, our up and comers are best.
Right. This is the project to like make your bones. People are going to be watching you.
And I remember a woman was nominated for it. And this senior woman said, she's got twins. She's not going to want to do this. And she was just taken off the list.
Yeah.
I know her. It's very the twins are overwhelming. Not, and you're like, you think you were being helpful. You just queen beat that woman. Right.
Yeah. Total sabotage right there. And even if you're like, I'm going to save her from this because she won't do well on this because of the twins. So she'll get the opportunity next time and she'll blow it out of the water. The opportunity never comes back.
I'm sure she meant well. I'm sure she thought she was doing it a favor. Look, I saw her the other day. She looks terrible. Right.
Yeah.
But I think we just have to I always say we just break the wheel, just break the friggin' wheel, promote each other, talk each other up. I don't care if it's not your turn. Right. And none of this, you have to wait till you've done X, Y, Z. Like I want everybody to be successful. And that's actually why being an entrepreneur has been really great for me, because it actually helps if other women are successful. Right. So there's like, oh yeah, a woman CEO or a woman startup CEO in her 50s, or as I am obviously in my 20s, oh, that's totally normal.
It is maybe the biggest.
I'm not in my 20s, Laura. I'm in my 50s. Come on. Speechless. She's like, what the hell? What?
I know. I was like, I thought I tend to do a lot of research on my guests, and I've read your book, and I've seen you. I've kind of been a fangirl for a while, and really, I just turned 50 on last Monday, so I was like, God, what is she like? She's looking good. And here's the thing about turning 50 is that all the women in my life were like, hot damn girl. And all the men were like, happy 27th birthday, as if I should want to be 27 again. Or they're like,
know,
you look
yeah.
great for 50. I thought you were 40. You're kidding. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm really proud of this. I'm proud that I've worked this
Yeah.
hard. I'm proud that I'm as fit as I am, but I'm also proud of the wrinkles and the scars and the roadmap of my life. And don't tell me
Yeah.
that I'm wrong because I don't fit into your 27-year-old view.
I'm not there.
Well, listen, I haven't made my peace yet with the knife, but I'm definitely okay with the needle. So, and the laser. So,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
turning 50 for me was a bummer. I didn't mind 40. I didn't mind 45. I didn't mind 49. I didn't mind, 30 sort of bugged me, but 50 sort of hit me, and now I get over it. But of course I keep dreaming I'm in my 30s. I just have this ongoing recurring dream that I'm pregnant, and I know
it sounds like a nightmare.
Well, and I think it might be the business. I think it's the business that I'm thinking.
Yeah. I mean, it may be that you are in the midst of birthing this thing that, the gestational process of a human being is 9 months, but a business is like, it's like an elephant. It's like 2 years, right? And then each time you get to the next plateau, you're like, well, there could be more. This is really interesting. Now what can we do? Which actually is a great segue to Wonder Hell. So, as I mentioned before we started this, I'm doing these interviews as research for my next book, and as I'll just very quickly repeat for people who are listening, Wonder Hell is that moment when you see this glimpse of who you can be that maybe you hadn't seen yourself in quite this way before, or you feel the pressure of doing something because you feel this potential, and you look around and you're like, this thing has to be done. Yeah. I'm a person who can do this thing. Why not me? And I heard you speak as part of your book tour when Own It first came out, in the living room of a friend of mine, and you were telling this story. It was like 100 women in this woman's condo, and you were telling a story, and you literally like did the thing where you were like, and there I was putting on the mascara, with, the mouth open, because of course the mouth has to be open, and I can still envision you doing it. And you're like, and then I realized, well, if Gloria Steinem said that women are never going to be equal, like we're never going to have power unless we have financial power. And I have a background in understanding investing in Wall Street. Yeah. I guess it's got to be me. And you had that moment. And then once you realize that, if you don't do it.
No, then you're a jerk. Then a very valuable piece of research for me is the recognition that people regret on their deathbed what they didn't do, not what they did. Yes. Which makes it sort of easy. Just do it, right? And of course, having had some public failures and knowing I can survive them. Look, I don't want another public failure, believe me, but I understand, that they are survivable. But as you said, I was in my bathroom one morning putting on my mascara, and actually, Laura, the world shook. I mean, before I had the thought, I thought I'm about to have a thought, and it was sort of a cascading series of insights.
It was like a labor pain.
Yeah, which really started with the retirement savings crisis is actually a woman's crisis.
Yes.
That's where it started. Why? Because we live 68 years longer than men do. 80% of us die single. And while we talk about the gender pay gap, which is atrocious, but at least moving in the wrong direction, what I discovered later, so that the gender pay gap is 82 cents to a white man's dollar. There's a gender wealth gap.
Right.
It's 32 cents to a white man's dollar, 1 penny for Black women, 1 penny for brown women, moving in the wrong direction before the pandemic. And so if we're out of money, it's us who's out of money. How can we fix this? How can we fix this? And so the initial first thing always is we got to go get a raise. And then you say, well, a zillion people are working on that right now, right?
Right.
So there's what's between the pay gap, how much you bring in, and the wealth gap, how much you keep. Oh, well, there are a few things. Time and workforce, of course, because women take more time off for childcare, et cetera. Too much debt, more debt than men, but also not investing as much. And that is a huge wealth suck for women. And
because even all we've been told is lean in.
That's
all we've been told.
That we've been told to lean and ask for, but then we put the money.
I have issues with that.
Well, that's a whole different thing. But then we put the money in the bank where it earns nothing. Men then invest
because we're risk averse, right? Because we're worrying about risk. We're thinking long term, and
because we've been told. I'll tell you why. is because we've been told to worry about risk. We've been told we're not good with money. We've been told investing is riskier than it is. We've been told it's unattractive.
And
we've
the
been
man's job.
shown by our mothers. Our dads are investing, and our sons are seeing that. The moms are still coupon clipping and still budgeting. And so we men, when you say the word money for men, what comes to mind for them? Power, strength, independence. You say to women, it's loneliness, isolation, uncertainty. We watch TV. We see Carrie Bradshaw. I bought so many shoes. I couldn't afford my apartment and I don't know how to do the math. And she's cool. And what we found, there's all this male money media, which is about growing money and trading, et cetera. CNBC, Barron's, Bloomberg, Cranes. There's no female money media. And the articles, 2/3 are how hard it is. So they're negative, how difficult it is. And the other third is patronizing, take this money quiz, or guilt-inducing, don't buy the latte.
Right. The avocado toast is your problem.
That's right. And that's just coded, gendered language. Nobody's like, don't have the T-bone, don't buy the tool chest. So these guys feel good about money. We feel cruddy about money.
It's actually the opposite, right? Like all you see is this like hustle porn, douchebags all over the place with like, get the Maserati and the G6 and the, like they're told to have this extravagant lifestyles where we're told to be pretty.
Right. And we're told that, it's sort of cute to be bad with money. Still, even today, I sort of think of it like how it used to be unattractive to be athletic as a woman. And now it's part of a well-rounded life because of Serena and Venus and the U.S.
Thank God.
And money is the last one where it's still sort of unattractive for women to be good with money, which is why we founded Ellevest. But to your point, knowing all these cultural signals we get, knowing this costs women hundreds of thousands, for some women, millions of dollars over the course of their life, which is take your hand off my leg money, get the hell away get the hell out of this house money, start my business money, buy my beach house money, right? I mean, these aren't like, hey, you're out $1,000. I mean, this is life-changing amounts of money. So then I'm like, boy, the industry, 99% of investment dollars are managed at companies owned by white men. What if they built a business, an investing business for themselves, which is trading and the brand symbols, the bull? Someone needs to do one by women for women. And that person's going to need a deep finance background, probably should have been like a research analyst. They're going to have to be contrarian because you got to forget everything you know, have to put together a top-notch tech team, and they're going to have to raise a lot of money because venture, at the venture capitalist. And so they're going to have those connections. And even with all that, the odds are going to be completely against them because we mentioned before, women get 1% of the VC dollars. Who has a chance in hell of doing that?
So are you still on the left eye at this point, or had you moved to the right eye?
No, this happened over time. And so I'm like, it's me.
Yes.
It's me. And maybe I know of two other women and I think it's got to be a woman, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe I know of 2 other women and I happen to know the one's on the beach and the other's doing a bunch of boards. So it's me.
So how do you go from that moment of it's me to guess I'm going to do this? Guess I'm going to do this thing, because you had up until that point worked within institutions, mm-hmm. right? You'd been in big places. You'd had your name attached to brands that already existed. At this point, as you said, you're building out of the dirt. So how does did you know that you could do it when you started it, or were you like, maybe this will work, maybe it won't work?
Not only did I not know that I could do it, I almost couldn't explain it without thinking how stupid it was. I would begin to, hey, Laura, I'm really thinking about a company. It's going to be, you started as an investing company. It's going to be for women. And people will be like, but money's gender neutral. And, what is it going to be like an education thing? And no, I hypothesized that. And of course, my initial hypothesis was wrong and gendered, women have emotional blockages around money. And if we can help them get through, and I'd be halfway through and I'm like, this is the stupidest, I'm embarrassed. And And so then I go back and sort of re-gear myself up. And, eventually the first round got funded as it does, frankly, not because of the idea, because it was so poorly articulated, but because it was people I'd worked, again, my privilege. It was people I knew and had worked with.
Right.
And I remember Joe Mansueto at Morningstar, spending time with him on it. And we had known each other, and admired each other from, for years. And he said, look, Sallie, I know there's an opportunity there because I can see the numbers too, right? I can see women aren't investing as much as men are. I can see, I don't know why, and we've tried to run it a few times here. We failed. So I don't know if the problem is even solvable, but knowing you, if anybody can solve it, you've got the best chance, given your background, right? And given that you just don't give up. And so, being able to raise money the first round like that, and then the second round, you could say, okay, here are proof points. Here's what we've found.
What's so interesting to me about this is that what you are doing here is, you broke the biggest rule of all, right? When you do a startup, you go to customers that you already know are going to want your product. You go to customers that are tested, that have been, that have a proven track record of wanting to buy this, and you give them a better, different, cheaper, whatever it is, product. You weren't fishing where the fish were.
No.
Because you had to convince the fish they were even fish.
Well, it's worse than that, right? So it's, there were at the same time a few years early, a number of digital investment firms for men that were starting. And I think of what they had to do, right? What they had to do is, hey, Joe, you're already investing at Fidelity. We can do it. Our technology makes it cheaper and better in some way. Come on over.
Yeah.
Ours, hey, Sue, your money's in cash. You've been told that you're not good with money. You believe investing is much riskier than it actually is. You've been told we're for women. You've actually been told your whole life that for women is junior varsity, that it's inferior, that it's lesser, right? We're a new investing platform. I want you to change your behavior. I want you to bring the money over. You could lose it all.
By the way, also, this is a problem you might not face for 30 or 40 years even.
Yeah. Oh, there's
no
way
now.
to do it at all, right? Because you can't see the money you're losing by not investing. We don't have a track record, and you can't
promise it exists,
right? It didn't. A track record did not exist. I mean, I've got my track record. I have, a chief, Dr. Sylvia Kwan, PhD, CFA, but you can't, say, well, she did this over here, and this is our track record. You're not allowed to do that. The Securities and Exchange Commission won't let you. So look at us. We're smart people. Here's our background. But I don't think I began to, I had no idea how hard what we were doing was going to.
Because you had to convince them that everything they've ever thought about money, that people are going to steal from them and take from them, is wrong, because you're trying to tell them that you're honest. You're trying to tell them they can actually do it. You're trying to tell them it's actually a problem they need to worry about today. You're trying to tell them that the problem of losing money that they can't even see happening really exists. I mean, so much of what you were trying to do had never been done before, and you were working against everything that women have trained into them. So I want to get into you as the entrepreneur and sort of the psychology around this and that burden of potential. What you had been doing before is you had been running companies, big companies, in a lot of ways, sort of nameless, faceless consumers, even though you were the one who were like, this is a mom and pop. You were the one who was still fighting that. But now you were righteously indignant about this problem. And did it change for you the burden that you felt, that it's how much it had to be successful, or is success just like it's success or it's failure? There's black and white.
No, it's awful. It's really awful. And it's funny because you mentioned when we were starting that you had people who literally died and came back and blah, 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 blah. So in the end of October, beginning of November, I stood in line for 3.5 hours in a chilly New York evening to vote early. I was listening to that episode of yours about the guy who died and came back.
Joshua Mance. Yeah.
And so I guess about an hour. So I stood in line, listened to an hour. When the hour is up, the woman behind me very politely, excuse me, Yes. And she said, I see you've got an Ellevest bag. Do you work at Ellevest? Oh, I'm Sallie Krawcheck. Burst into tears. She said, you've changed my life. That you've changed. I know. Like, I can't even get it out. And it's not the first time that's happened. Money is women's number one source of stress, Laura. The act of doing something, saving more, investing more, is the number one driver of her confidence in her future. It's not leaning in. It's not where you went to college. It's not who you're married to. It is, are you taking that action? That's where Ellevest operates. We are the only one who does. So the responsibility I feel to the 100 employees who are following my dream, to the women out there for whom there's nothing like what we're doing. And just to make it worse, we've got these amazing investors. We've got the Melinda Gates and the Penny Pritzkers and the Venus Williams and the Melody Hobsons and, the venture capital funds that are the very few that are run by women. And so I will wake up. It's awful how much my mood is tied to what's going on in the business that day. I hate to admit it, but I get a daily conversion report every day at 8:02. And Laura, by 7:55, my heart's beating fast. And I know my mood for the day is going to be based on, did we beat plan? Are we ahead of plan? And I have to calm that down. I know that, right? But the responsibility I feel to all of those folks, and plus even to women more broadly, because it's not like we've been quiet.
Right.
It's not like we're just building this little tiny thing.
No, you're fighting for women, even who aren't investing in you. You're right. Fighting this fight.
We are out there, and you may not like me, you may not like what I say, but we are changing the narrative for our nieces and our daughters, and our little sisters and all that stuff. And it has to be changed. And we're the only ones who are doing it. So yeah, I feel like dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might explain the dreams that you're having a little bit. I don't know if you have to calm that down. When we were doing search, like we found the head of the ACLU 2 weeks before, 2 years before the Ferguson riots happened. Like placing the wrong person in that role would have fundamentally changed the outcome of what was going on there. I believe that we do the work we do because it matters. It matters to us. And I would have staff from time to time in my old firm come to me and say, well, I don't understand why you're upset. Our client was happy with this. Why are you upset? And I'm like, well, our client was happy because it was 5% better than the last firm who did crappy work for them. So like they're happy with crap plus 5? No, like we know what's good and we know what's not. And our clients deserve our very best. They are putting their money with us. They are expecting an outcome in return. And if we don't give it to them, shame on us.
I know.
I felt that in my core, and I ran that business for 15 years and it never went away. And I think that's part of what makes you great.
Well, I think so, but you also have to get aware of burning out, right?
Yes. So,
and of the finiteness of life. I mean, I had a woman who worked for me years ago, who just worked and 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 worked. She had a 1-year-old child. She was hit by a truck and was killed. And I remember going to her funeral and being like, that was her life. Like, that was it, and so, we're in the pandemic, so there's no fun to be had anyway, but I do get a little more aware of the not work-life balance, but just joy, just getting enough joy in my life because it won't be around for forever.
So every book that I've read, I went on a hunt when I experienced this wonder hell moment. And I went on a hunt to find books about this. And it turns out that there's tons of books about 10x your business or lean in or hustle harder. And then there's like Eat, Pray, Love and Be Untamed and, all great for what they are for. But they're basically either about like work really hard or a lot of self-care and just survive the moment. Like, shoulder the wheel, you'll get through it. And then success is on the other side and everything's going to be great. And it turns out that when you get to success on the other side, all you get is the next moment of potential and the next moment. So on the other side of every wonder hell is the next wonder hell. So I'm writing this book not to tell people to survive it, but to help them thrive in it and embrace it and be excited about it. And to see that part of it is that there's failure there, but there's also opportunity, there's learning, there's growth, there's this discovery that's there. So I think joy is looking for joy is a great one. But I want to go back to what you said about being average as a parent, because I sent the sort of 4.5-page overview to a bunch of people about this book. And all the women were like, could you write this book yesterday, please? And all the men were like, I'm not sure it resonates. I'm not sure I get it. And I think part of that is because if men have experienced that, oh my God, I have so much potential. Can I do it? Can I live into it? They've experienced at work. Right. Whereas women experience it at work and at home, as a mother, as a friend, as a sister, as a daughter. And when you said, I just wanted to be average as a parent, that you weren't trying to blow it out of the water in every single part of your life. You were husbanding your resources and your energy and figuring out where you were most important in those moments. Do you think that, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in terms of thinking about thriving, not just like some of it's surviving, but as you think about how to like enjoy this and make it fun and have joy and be your best and show up for the women you want to show up for, what are you doing to thrive in these moments, to live in it and be present for it?
Yeah. Well, look, when I was sort of at those big corporates, that average meant to me that I took joy from it, that when I went home, I could relax, right, and have fun and enjoy the family, not be concerned about, am I getting each kid to self-actualization? And, did I have a moment, when I'm watching other kids taking language and you sort of realize, okay, the chance for my child to be fluent in XYZ language has now passed, right? You feel a little, yeah. But by the way, Laura, my kids are in their 20s now. So I know, I'm sure they'll change in their 30s and 40s, but people don't change that much. They're good people. They're hardworking people. They care. Gosh, they care. And so my being average maybe was the best thing for them, because nobody needs full-on Sallie, for sure. And so
my kids, one cocktail Laura is their favorite version of mom.
Oh yeah. Oh, I drink wine every night, whether I need it or not. So, so look, we all have to sort of find that through our lives, finding those moments. I would love to be a little less intense at some point, a little less insecure at some point, a little less to prove at some point. But I'm also in my 50s. So, I don't quite know how much is going to change from that. And hopefully women who have more money in 5 years than they do today will be the beneficiary of my frantic nature.
Do you ever think that some of your success is not despite the insecurity, but because of it?
Oh, I know it. No, not do I sometimes think. I know it. I know it. I was bullied in middle school. I was in all girls, Charleston, South Carolina, middle school, bullied, ate lunch alone, picked last, for the team, mocked, like, come on out, here's a boy, he wants to meet you. Ha ha, there's no boy, no one would ever like Sallie. Bullied. And every once in a while, and when I see those women, when I go back to Charleston, it still hurts. But every once in a while, Laura, I'm like, let's see how we're doing now, shall we? Let's, and they come like, oh my gosh, how are you? I'm like, hi.
Yes. I think you and I might have had some similar experiences. And I did just go to my 30th high school reunion. And there was definitely a moment where I was like,
hello, I know.
Doing all right.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun to spend time with you.
Yes. Well, you too. I know I could talk to you all day, but I do want to respect your time. So I want to tell people to make sure they pick up a copy of Own It. If you don't already, from listening to this, think you got to call up Ellevest, ellevest.com and sign up for an account. This book will talk you into it. What else do you want to leave the women and the men who are listening with? Well,
look, money is power. We women will not be fully equal with men until we are financially equal with men. That is just the way of the world. And so I am, really spending my life trying to build a business to get more money in the hands of women through investing, through better management of debt, through coaching, through learning, et cetera. And frankly, as I love to say, I haven't found anything bad that happens when women have more money, yet to find one bad thing. So That's it. Well, thank you again for having me. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.